The evening rush at Riverstone Lounge began with a strange kind of energy. The kind that makes every worker straighten their uniform and every customer look toward the entrance with quiet curiosity. Because everyone had heard the same rumor that the famous billionaire Adrian Cole was coming tonight. And whenever Adrian Cole visited any place, the air shifted and people felt a mix of fear and nervous excitement. Since he was known across the city as a man with power, money, and a reputation for belittling anyone he saw as beneath him, Maya, a young waitress with warm eyes and steady hands, moved gently around the restaurant while carrying plates and greeting guests with soft smiles. And although she looked simple to most people, there was something different about her. A calm confidence behind her polite expressions, like she understood more about the world than she showed. Though no one could guess the truth she carried in her heart. A truth that would soon reshape everything. Restaurant lights shimmered across the polished wooden floor as workers whispered about Adrian's arrival. And Maya listened quietly while wiping a table, wondering why someone with so much money chose to treat others so harshly. But she kept her thoughts to herself because she had learned long ago that silence often held more power than loud words. Especially when someone underestimated her. Suddenly the entrance burst open as 3 bodyguards stepped in first, clearing the way. And then Adrian Cole walked inside wearing a dark tailored suit that probably cost more than every paycheck of every worker standing in the room combined. And the entire restaurant froze like time had been pressed into slow motion, with guests staring and staff holding their breaths, as if any wrong move might bring trouble. Adrian moved with the confidence of a king who believed the world existed for him alone, his cold eyes scanning the room without care for the people who made it run. And when a hostess nervously stepped forward to guide him to his table, he brushed past her without a thank you, proving the rumors about him were not exaggerated at all. Maya stood near the back and watched calmly, wondering how long it would take before Adrian's sharp tongue targeted someone. Because men like him always believed kindness was weakness and humility was a flaw. But she had seen enough of the world to know that arrogant people eventually face the truth. Sometimes in the most unexpected ways. When the manager signaled for Maya to take the billionaire's order, she took a deep breath and walked forward, her apron clean and her step steady. And as she approached Adrian's table, she greeted him politely with a warm, respectful tone. But the billionaire barely looked at her and continued checking his expensive watch. She asked what he would like to order, and he finally lifted his head, staring at her like she was an inconvenience. And he said, his voice filled with annoyance, that he expected better service in a place that called itself high class. Asking why she was so slow, even though she had only spoken a few words. Everyone nearby heard his tone and looked away uncomfortably, pretending to focus on their meals because they did not want to be caught in the blast of Adrian's temper. But Maya stood still with patience in her eyes, refusing to let his insult shake her. She repeated her question in the same calm voice, and Adrian smirked, asking if she even understood the menu, or if she needed someone to explain it to her like a child. And the people around them shifted in their seats with silent anger. But no one dared speak. Maya, however, kept her expression gentle, replying that she understood the menu very well, and simply wished to take his order correctly, which made Adrian lean back with a mocking laugh, saying he hoped the kitchen staff were smarter than the waitress they hired, because he expected perfection when he spent his money. Her co-workers watched with helpless frustration, knowing they could not intervene because losing a customer like Adrian could cost their jobs. Yet Maya remained steady like a quiet storm rising in the distance, measured and controlled. Waiting for the moment she needed to reveal her strength, she wrote down his order carefully while Adrian continued complaining about the lighting, the chairs, and even the music, acting as if the entire world existed just to irritate him. And every word from his mouth confirmed that he believed power meant permission to disrespect anyone he pleased. As Maya walked away from his table, she exhaled slowly, not out of fear but out of pity, because she knew something Adrian did not know. Something that would flip his world upside down in less than 24 hours. Something that would bring him face to face with the truth he had avoided for years. She whispered under her breath so softly that no one else heard, saying that some lessons arrive when a person least expects them. And she wondered how Adrian would react when he discovered exactly who she really was and why she was here tonight. Quietly observing the man who believed he was untouchable, and, as she carried the order slip toward the kitchen, her phone buzzed in her pocket, with a message that would change the story completely. A message that read: "Your new position begins tomorrow morning. Welcome to the role of Chief Executive Officer of Coal Industries." The night outside Riverstone Lounge felt cooler than usual as Maya stepped into the small alley behind the restaurant. Her apron still tied around her waist and her hair slightly messy from the long shift. Yet her eyes stayed calm as she pulled out her phone. Knowing the message she had received earlier carried a weight that could change not only her life but also the life of the man who had insulted her. Without a second thought, she pressed the phone to her ear and spoke in a quiet, confident voice, very different from the gentle tone she used inside the restaurant, saying she had met Adrian Cole a few hours ago and saying she understood now why the company board had been so worried. Because if he treated strangers with such disrespect, she could only imagine how he treated his employees behind closed doors. And the person on the other end replied with a mix of concern and relief. Asking if she was all right, Maya said she was completely fine, explaining that arrogance did not scare her anymore because she had faced worse situations in her past. But she admitted that watching Adrian insult simple, hard-working people made her angry in a way she had not expected. And she felt even more determined to step into her new role tomorrow and bring real change to the company. While she spoke outside in the cold breeze. Inside the restaurant, Adrian sat in his chair with growing impatience, tapping his expensive watch and complaining loudly that his food was taking too long, as if the kitchen existed only to serve him. And his voice echoed through the soft music like a warning signal, telling everyone to stay away from him. The manager tried to speak to him carefully, offering him a complimentary drink to calm him. But Adrian waved him off like he was brushing away an insect, saying the service tonight was unacceptable and he would make sure the owner heard about this terrible experience. And the staff watched helplessly, wishing someone could stop his harsh attitude. Even for a moment, Maya ended her call with a deep, thoughtful breath and walked back inside, knowing the shift was not over yet and knowing Adrian was still waiting for his meal, ready to attack anyone who came near him. But when she stepped through the door, something unexpected happened. Something that caught her attention immediately. One of the new waiters, named Liam, stood near Adrian's table holding a tray with shaking hands, terrified of making a mistake, and Adrian stared at him with cold eyes full of impatience, asking why the food looked late and why the staff in this place could not simply do their job correctly. And Liam's voice trembled as he tried to answer, but his fear made his words stumble. Maya rushed forward before Adrian's anger could grow worse, gently taking the tray from Liam and whispering that she would handle it. And Liam nodded gratefully, stepping away like a man escaping danger, while Adrian leaned back with a smug expression as if expecting Maya to apologize for the entire restaurant. But Maya did not apologize. She simply placed the plate on his table with steady, careful movements and asked if he needed anything else. And Adrian narrowed his eyes, studying her face as if trying to understand why she did not appear shaken by his behavior, why she did not flinch the way others did. He asked her if she even liked working here, or if she was stuck in this job because she had no other options. His voice sharp and filled with condescension, and Maya felt a small wave of sadness for him, because he truly believed the value of a person came from their job title or salary, not from their character or kindness. She replied gently that working with people had taught her more about life than money ever could. And Adrian laughed as if her words were a silly joke, saying people only spoke like that when they were poor and had no real dreams. and his laughter was loud enough for nearby customers to hear, causing them to exchange uncomfortable glances. Maya then gave him a quiet look, not angry but deeply thoughtful. And for a moment, Adrian felt something strange. A small shift inside his chest, as if her calmness was forcing him to see himself more clearly. Though he quickly pushed away the feeling because he hated anything that made him question his own superiority. As she turned to walk away, he called after her, asking why she looked so confident when she was just a waitress serving rich people every night. And she paused for a single breath before answering in her soft, mysterious tone that no job defines a person's true worth. And sometimes people who appear ordinary hold the biggest surprises. Adrian frowned, confused by her words, and asked what that was supposed to mean. But Maya simply smiled politely and continued walking toward the kitchen, leaving him unsettled without knowing why. While she passed through the swinging kitchen doors, her phone buzzed once again. And this time the message said the board meeting had been moved to early morning because the new CEO needed to be introduced before Adrian arrived. And Maya stared at the screen with a slow rising determination. She knew tomorrow would be a turning point. She knew Adrian would be forced to see her real identity. And she wondered if he would finally learn the lesson the world had tried to teach him for years. A lesson about humility, respect, and the true meaning of power. Behind her, Adrian continued eating without gratitude, still convinced he ruled every room he entered, unaware that the woman he had mocked just minutes ago would soon walk into his company office not as a waitress but as the new leader he never expected. Morning sunlight crept over the tall glass towers of the city as Adrian Cole's private car pulled into the parking area of Cole Industries, the giant company he believed he controlled completely. And with every confident step he took through the spotless lobby, he felt the same familiar pride, the same belief that no one could challenge him or question his power. Especially not today, when the board planned to introduce a new CEO he already assumed would be someone weak and easy to control. He walked toward the elevator with a sharp expression, thinking about the embarrassing dinner from the night before. Not because he felt guilty about how he treated the waitress, but because the restaurant had dared to give him slow service. And his frustration still clung to him like a shadow, making everyone in the lobby step aside as he passed the elevator doors, closed around him with a soft chime as he began rising toward the top floor where the board meeting would take place. And Adrian adjusted his tie while imagining the new CEO, telling himself that whoever they chose must understand that he would always be the true power of the company, and no newcomer could ever change that. Meanwhile, Maya stood inside a quiet hallway outside the main boardroom, wearing a clean-fitted suit that made her look like a completely different person from the waitress who carried plates and wiped tables the night before. Yet her eyes kept the same calm confidence she always carried, the same peaceful strength that never depended on money or position. And as she waited, she breathed in deeply, preparing for the moment that would change everything. Several board members were already inside the meeting room discussing schedules in low voices. And when they stepped out and saw Maya, they greeted her with warmth and respect, calling her Miss Rivera and welcoming her as the new leader they had placed their hope in. And Maya smiled back with gratitude, though a quiet tension sat in her chest because she knew Adrian would walk in soon and the truth would hit him harder than anything in his life. A secretary hurried forward and informed everyone that Mr. Cole had arrived at the building and was heading up. And the board members exchanged uneasy glances because none of them had told Adrian who the new CEO was, fearing he might try to block the decision or create a scene. But Maya lifted a hand gently and said everything would be handled calmly inside the elevator. Adrian felt the impatience building in him again as he thought about the company performance, the new projects, and the shareholders who annoyed him with constant demands. And he told himself he needed a CEO who followed instructions and never questioned him. Someone who would take credit for decisions he approved and accept blame for mistakes he caused. And he felt confident the board had no courage to choose anyone with real power when the elevator doors opened on the top floor. 2 assistants rushed to greet him nervously, leading him toward the boardroom where everyone waited. But before entering, Adrian paused to fix his hair and adjust his suit, preparing to step inside like a king examining his throne. Unaware that the world he controlled was about to shift under his feet, the board members rose politely when he entered, and Adrian gave a forced smile, pretending he respected them even though he usually ignored their advice. Then he asked with a sharp tone when the new CEO would arrive, because he had other meetings to attend and did not want to waste time on introductions. The chairman spoke carefully, saying the new CEO was already present, and Adrian's eyebrows lifted in annoyance as he looked around the room, searching for someone he did not recognize. But everyone looked too familiar, too old, too predictable, until the chairman turned toward the side door and invited someone to step in. The door opened slowly, and Maya walked into the room, her steps steady and graceful, her face calm and unreadable. And every word spoken in the room faded into silence as Adrian stared at her with disbelief, unable to move or speak because the image of the waitress from last night clashed violently with the woman standing before him. Now he blinked hard, thinking his mind was playing tricks. But there she was, the same gentle eyes, the same quiet strength, only now dressed like someone who belonged in the highest circle of power. And the room seemed to tilt as his confusion grew into shock, then embarrassment, then something deeper he could not name. The chairman introduced her formally as Maya Rivera, the new chief executive officer of coal industries, chosen for her experience, leadership, and vision. And Adrian felt heat rise in his face as the truth hit him. The realization that he had insulted and mocked the very person who now stood above him in rank. The person he had to work with every day. He tried to speak, but his voice broke. And the board members kept their eyes lowered because they knew this moment was painful for him, yet necessary. While Maya met Adrian's gaze with calm politeness, offering no anger or revenge, only quiet dignity that made his pride shrink even more. She stepped forward and greeted him professionally, thanking him for being present. And Adrian felt a heavy weight settle on his chest as he tried to understand how the simple waitress could also be the powerful CEO. And a lingering fear whispered inside him that everything in his life was about to change. The boardroom air grew thick with tension as Adrian stood frozen in place, unable to understand how the woman he insulted the night before now stood before him as the new leader of his company. And the silence that followed felt heavy enough to press against every wall, making even the most confident board members shift uncomfortably in their seats, while Maya remained calm and steady like a quiet storm, waiting for the right moment to speak. She stepped forward slowly with a gentle, polite nod, greeting each board member before turning toward Adrian with a respectful tone, thanking him for being present at the introduction. And though her words were warm, her presence carried a different kind of power, the kind that did not need to shout or demand attention because it naturally commanded the room. Simply by existing, Adrian felt something sharp twist in his chest, part humiliation, part disbelief, part fear, because he realized the waitress he had belittled so easily had more strength and control than he ever imagined. And as the board members invited Maya to address the team, he could not stop staring at her, trying desperately to understand how he had missed all the signs that she was more than she appeared. Maya began speaking with a soft, confident voice that carried across the room, telling the board about her plans for the company and her goals for the future, explaining that she believed in treating employees with respect and building a culture where people felt valued. And each word she spoke challenged everything Adrian had believed about leadership for years, because she showed that true power came from kindness and clarity, not arrogance. As she spoke, the board members leaned forward with interest, nodding thoughtfully because her ideas were fresh and full of hope. and they could feel the shift in the company already, like a new chapter beginning right before their eyes. But Adrian felt a growing discomfort inside him because for the first time, he was no longer the center of attention or the strongest person in the room. When Maya finished speaking, the chairman asked if anyone had questions, and Adrian stepped forward suddenly, unable to hold back the frustration boiling inside him, demanding to know why she had been hired without his approval and questioning her experience in a voice sharp enough to make one of the assistants flinch. But Maya did not flinch at all, and instead looked at him with calm, steady eyes that made his anger lose strength. She explained politely that the board had reviewed her background carefully and found her more than qualified, reminding Adrian that leadership was not just about money or titles, but about the ability to guide people with fairness and vision. And her words cut through his pride like a quiet blade, not meant to wound him, but to reveal something he had refused to see for years. Adrian tried to interrupt again, raising his voice slightly as he insisted he deserved to know the full hiring process. But the chairman stepped in gently, saying that the company needed fresh direction and the board believed Maya was the right person to lead them forward, adding that they hoped Adrian would learn to work with her as a partner rather than an obstacle, which left Adrian speechless because he had never been spoken to like that in his own building. Maya then stepped closer to him and spoke softly enough that only he and a few nearby members could hear, telling him that she understood change was difficult and she did not expect trust immediately, but she believed strongly that every person deserved respect no matter their role, a lesson she hoped he might one day appreciate because it could change not only the company but his entire outlook on life. Her gentle tone made Adrian feel something unfamiliar, a strange mix of guilt and confusion as he remembered the way he had mocked her at the restaurant, calling her slow, calling her untrained, acting as if she was beneath him. And now seeing her standing tall with grace and strength made him feel small in a way he had never experienced before, like his own reflection had suddenly become clearer and less flattering. The board meeting continued with discussions about new projects and department improvements, and Maya answered every question with calm intelligence that impressed everyone in the room, while Adrian remained quiet in the corner, trying to understand how everything had changed so quickly. And the longer he watched her, the more he felt the uncomfortable truth settle inside him that maybe he had been wrong about more than just one person. As the meeting came to an end, Maya thanked everyone again and began gathering her papers. But before she stepped out of the room, she turned toward Adrian with a polite smile and invited him to meet with her privately later in the day so they could discuss company transitions and future plans. And the board members exchanged surprised glances because they knew this conversation would test Adrian more than anything. Adrian nodded stiffly, unable to form proper words. And as Maya walked out of the room with graceful confidence, he felt his entire world shifting, like the ground beneath him was being rearranged into something new, something he did not fully understand yet, but could no longer avoid. The rest of the morning moved slowly for Adrian as he walked through the hallways of Coal Industries with a heavy feeling inside his chest, a feeling he did not understand because he had never experienced anything like it before. And every employee he passed seemed unusually tense, as if they could sense that something important had shifted in the company. And deep inside himself, he knew they were right, because his world no longer felt the same. Maya spent the morning moving from department to department with calm confidence, speaking with workers, answering questions, and listening to their concerns. And everywhere she went, she left the same impression of kindness and quiet strength. And many employees whispered to one another that she was different from any leader they had seen before, someone who made them feel respected and safe. And this made Adrian watch her from a distance with growing confusion. He tried to understand how the same woman he had mocked as a waitress could connect so easily with people who had worked here for years. And the longer he observed her, the more he realized that she carried something he had never learned, something he had never valued, a quality that made people want to follow her without fear or hesitation. And this realization made him feel strangely small. Later in the afternoon, Maya sent him a message asking him to meet her in her new office for the private conversation she had mentioned earlier. And Adrian felt a strange nervousness he had never felt before as he walked down the hallway toward the large glass door with her name already displayed beside it. And when he stepped inside, he noticed how simple and peaceful the office looked, with warm lights, soft colors, and a small plant on the desk that made the room feel alive. Maya stood near the window looking out at the city below, and when she turned to face him, her expression was gentle, not angry, not triumphant, just calm and thoughtful. And this unsettled Adrian even more because he had expected her to look at him with revenge or victory, but instead she looked at him like someone who wanted understanding. She invited him to sit, and he did so quietly, feeling strangely out of place. And after a moment she began speaking in a soft voice, saying that she wanted their relationship to succeed, but success would not come unless both of them learned to work together in a respectful way. And she added that respect went both ways and needed to be given, not demanded. Her words struck something inside Adrian like a slow, warm ache, and he looked down at his hands, trying to find the courage to respond. But before he could, she continued, saying that she knew he was talented and intelligent, but his arrogance had pushed people away and created fear instead of loyalty. And she hoped he could learn another way, a better way. Adrian felt his throat tighten because, for the first time in a long time, someone was speaking to him honestly, without fear, without flattery, without trying to impress him. And he realized how unusual that felt and how unfamiliar honesty sounded when he no longer hid behind his power. And slowly he raised his eyes to meet hers and said in a quiet, unusual tone that he was sorry. The word came out awkward and heavy, as if he had never spoken it before, and Maya's expression softened even more, encouraging him to continue. And he admitted in a low voice that he had treated her cruelly at the restaurant and treated many others the same way because he thought that was how successful people acted. And now he could see how wrong he had been. Maya listened without judgment, and when he finished she nodded, gently saying that change was possible for anyone willing to learn. And she added that leadership was not about making people fear you, but making them believe in the direction you were guiding them. And her voice carried the kind of sincerity that touched something deep inside Adrian. He sat in silence for a long moment, thinking about the many times he had yelled at assistants, embarrassed workers, and spoken down to people who were simply doing their best. And the shame that rose inside him felt heavy, but also strangely freeing, because he was finally seeing himself with clear eyes.